Have you ever learned a new word and then all of a sudden you start hearing that word everywhere? Or maybe you bought a certain kind of car and now everywhere you look, it's like you see that same car. It's exactly like yours. And you start thinking to yourself, like, wait a minute, did everybody go out and buy the same exact car, or was I just not paying attention before? Right? Well, apparently, there is a reason that this happens. It has something to do with a part of our brain, and that part is called the reticular activating system. And that's also known as the RAS. Now, let me say this up front, that I am not a neuroscientist, and I just recently learned about this myself. But once I started like reading about it and looking more into it and doing my own experiments and research, I really became fascinated with it. So I wanted to share it with you guys. And because you guys know me, when I hear about something interesting, I have to go and test it out for myself. That's just how I am. So today, what I want to talk to you about is something called the reticular activating system. And that's how our minds filter out information. And what happened when I decided that I was going to see a butterfly. Okay. I want to tell you what happened later on that day, and because it really did surprise me. But before we get into that, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then also share it with someone who is always saying, that's a sign, that's a sign of something. Share it with this video with them. Because after watching this video, they might start noticing things. They might start noticing signs everywhere. Okay. So from what I've learned about the RAS, the reticular activating system, it's a tongue twister for me sometimes. It's a network located within like your brain stems, and it plays a important role with things like staying awake, alert, focusing on things, paying attention. Because every day our brains receive so much information, and we can't possibly pay attention to all the information that our brain receives. So just think about everything happening around you right now. So like maybe you can hear the refrigerator humming. Maybe a car is driving down the street at the same time. Your air conditioner is running. A dog is barking somewhere. You can hear your neighbors from down the street. The television is playing in another room. The kids are across the room making noise. All of this is happening at the same time. Your clothes is touching your skin. Your feet might be touching the floor. There's different smells around you. Maybe you smell onions and garlic. Your phone might be blinking, lighting up 5 times, with notification. And all that information is coming to you all at once. But you're not consciously paying attention to every single bit of it. And really, thank goodness, right? Like, could you imagine trying to concentrate on the clock ticking? Tick tock, tick tock, your socks touching your feet, the neighbors cutting the grass, the refrigerator making noise, somebody talking outside, and every little thing that's moving around all around you, all at the same time. That would drive me crazy. I would be ready to go back to bed. I'd be so overstimulated, because our brains have to decide what information is important enough to bring to our attention. So that's a good thing. And then it also decides which information can kind of stay in the background that we don't have to focus on. So the RAS, that's involved with our alertness and our focus. But attention actually involves several different areas of the brain working together. So there isn't like one little tiny person sitting inside your head, like sitting on your shoulder with a control panel pushing buttons or something like that saying, oh, show Latifah a butterfly. It's nothing like that. But when something becomes important to you, your brain may become more likely to notice it. So that's what it's all about. So that brings me to my butterfly experience and my experiment that I did. So I had been learning about the RAS for a little while, and it tells us that we tend to notice things or pay attention and focus on things. So I decided to test it for myself. So that particular morning I said, okay, I woke up and I said, today I'm going to see a butterfly. Now, I wasn't planning to go to the butterfly garden or look up butterflies on Google or anything like that. And I also prefaced it. I said, I can see it on TV. I can see it in writing. I can see the word butterfly written out, something like that. I can see it online. I didn't just narrow it down. I just simply told myself I was going to see a butterfly. And then I just went on about my regular day. Okay. So later that day, I went over to my sister's house, and while I was there, I looked towards some bushes that she had in front of her house, and there was a white butterfly flying around in the bushes. And I said to myself, wait a minute, didn't I just say this morning that I was going to see a butterfly? So I was fascinated. So now I'm standing there at my sister's yard, like I'm staring at this little white butterfly, and it was flying all around. And it was like it came there specifically looking for me, because I'm like, I never see butterflies. And I'm thinking, did this butterfly just really get the message that I said I was going to see a butterfly today? Or did somebody send it my schedule that I'm going to be over here at my sister's house? I'm just playing. But seriously, that experience, it really caught my attention. And I was fascinated with it because it happened the same exact day that I decided that I was going to see a butterfly. I said to myself that morning I was going to see a butterfly, and it happened. So I was fascinated. Now, I know there's butterflies outside all the time, every day. I'm sure they are. They're probably going to be there at her house in her bushes, no matter if I made that statement or not. But the difference is that this time I noticed it. Before learning about the RAS, I might have walked right past those bushes. I might have just went into her house and never really thought twice about it. My brain wouldn't have noticed that butterfly, is what I'm saying. The butterfly may have always been there, or maybe it wasn't there. But my brain figured it was important enough for my mind to bring it to my attention, that white butterfly flying around. And I was fascinated. But because I had already told my brain that butterflies were important, that is the reason that white butterfly immediately stood out to me. And that was the part that really, really fascinated me. So how many things around us every day that we simply don't notice, And if our minds can filter out something as simple as a butterfly, what else are we filtering out, right? Could we be overlooking opportunities? Could we be overlooking things that could be helpful information to us? We could be ignoring people, resources, ideas, things like that might really move us closer to our goals. Now, I want to be careful here because some people, they connect the reticular activating system with manifestation. They make it seem like you can just think about something hard enough and it'll just automatically be delivered to your front door. And I'm not saying that at all. So I don't want this to be confused with that. Thinking about something, like if I go think about $1 million, that doesn't mean a brink truck is going to pull up outside my front door tomorrow and leave a big bag of money on my porch. So I'm not saying that. If that happens to you, then please call me immediately. because I need to know the exact instructions you follow, because from my experience, it don't work like that. But what I am saying is that when you clearly identify something as important, you may become more likely to start noticing information, choices, opportunities, things like that related to what you say is important. So, for example, let's say you decide you want to start a small business, okay? Before making that decision, you may have been scrolling on social media. You might have scrolled past information about grants, maybe business classes, free workshops, things like that, networking events, or, people looking for services that you could provide. But once starting a business becomes important to you, those things may begin to stand out. So you may have been overlooking things that were already there. It might feel like business opportunities just suddenly start appearing everywhere. But some of those opportunities may have already been around the entire time, but your brain filtered those things out as not important. So you just weren't looking at them because your brain had not marked that information as something that was important to you. It's the same thing like when you're thinking about buying a house. Suddenly you might notice for sale signs everywhere, or mortgage advertisements, home buyers programs, credit improvement tips, and also like conversations about interest rates, things like that. Or like if you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel like this one, and then all of a sudden you notice, different types of cameras, microphones, editing apps, video ideas, and everybody online start, you're hearing them telling you how much money they're making or they're supposedly making from YouTube. And then you're sitting there thinking, where was all this information before? Like you didn't notice it. Maybe it was already there. And then maybe your mind just wasn't focusing on it yet. Maybe it was filtering that information out. But this can also work in a negative direction as well. So let's say you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling good. You didn't sleep good, and you tell yourself, man, today is going to be terrible. I got so much work to do. And then your attention may start collecting evidence to support that belief. Maybe first you spill your coffee and you think, dang it, I knew it. It was already starting off bad. Then you get in your car and you get stuck behind the slowest driver in town, and you thinking, God dog it, here it goes again. And it's going to just start to spiral. Somebody don't speak to you and you're thinking, oh, now everybody got an attitude today. Like I already knew this day wasn't going to be a good day, because your mind is looking for reasons to reinforce what you already believe, But what about the person who held the door open for you? Or maybe you got a good parking spot right up in front. You found it when you first pulled up. Or you got a phone call that went better than you expected. You might not notice those things because your mind is too busy looking for evidence that your entire day is terrible, because you had already set that tone in the morning time. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't ignore real problems, or pretend like everything is wonderful. I'm not saying that. Don't pretend like everything is great when it's not. But I'm telling you that what we repeatedly focus on can influence what, our attention receives. So that's why I have personally started to be more intentional about what I'm telling myself, what I want to tell myself to look for, instead of, only thinking about everything that can go wrong, things that make me mad. I might say, today I'm going to notice something encouraging. I'm going to look for something good to happen to me today. Today I'm going to look for a useful opportunity or something like that. Or to maybe I might say to myself, like, I'm going to notice something that gives me a new idea. This isn't about sitting on the couch, thinking positive thoughts, and then just waiting for your life to change. I'm not saying that. Okay. You still have to do something. The Bible says faith without works is dead. So you still have to get up and do something. You can tell yourself that if you're going to notice business opportunities, but then one appears, you still have to read the information. You know, you still have to make those calls and submit the applications, ask questions, do the work. You still have to do the work. Your brain may help you, bring the opportunity to your attention, but it's not going to complete the application and do all the work for you. So I'm not trying to tell you that. I also think that it helps to explain why writing down or journaling things, writing down your goals can be very useful. Writing down your goal does not magically guarantee that it's going to happen, right? But it makes the goal clearer, and it helps to remind us, remind your mind of things that matters. If you write it down, write down, I want to earn extra $500 a month. You maybe start to begin to pay attention to realistic ways that people are, earning additional income, things like that. Let's just say if you write down, I want to improve my health, right? You may start noticing information about walking groups or bicycling groups or gym memberships, simple exercises, things like that. Let's say if you write down, I want to meet more positive people, then you may become more aware of maybe community events or classes, organizations, things like that, invitations that you previously would have ignored. So that's what I'm talking about. Your mind starts focusing on those things that you say are important, because just be creating goals out of thin air, that's not going to work. But you can be more sensitive to information that will help to connect you to those goals. So here's an experiment that I want you to try. Pick one simple thing that you normally don't pay much attention to. Okay. It can be something, it could be butterflies like what I did, or the color yellow. Maybe you want to see a yellow car. Maybe you want to see heart shapes, or people wearing purple. Pick something. Choose something that isn't extremely common, but also isn't impossible to find, and then write it down and say it out loud in the morning. Say, today I'm going to notice yellow cars, or today I'm going to notice butterflies, whatever. Then just go on about your day. Don't spend your whole day looking or searching on, like a scavenger hunt, looking for whatever you said you're going to see. Just go about your day naturally and see what catches your attention. So try that experiment. You might see something on a sign or on a shirt or television commercial, social media, something like that, on a post, maybe on a package. It could be, maybe somebody's front yard, somewhere completely unexpected. And then at the end of the day, after you do your experiment, go and write down what you noticed. And then I would say, after trying that with something simple, try the experiment with something connected to an actual goal that you have for yourself. And then, ask yourself, what do I want my mind to help me notice? Something like that. Maybe it's affordable ways to improve your home. It could be maybe new income opportunities. Maybe it's YouTube content ideas, or, maybe it's a way to save money. Just look for something that you want your mind to bring to your attention. It could be like resources for business, whatever. Just remember that noticing something doesn't automatically mean that it's the right opportunity for you, because you're telling your mind to notice it. You have to use common sense. Do your research, ask questions, and make good decisions, So every butterfly is not a message from God telling you to go take out a $20,000 loan. Okay, so don't get it wrong. Sometimes a butterfly is just a butterfly. You see, so, but my little butterfly experiment, it made me realize how much information that our minds really do filter out every day. And I was fascinated by the experiment. It also made me think more carefully about like what I'm feeding my mind and the things that I'm repeatedly telling myself. Because if I constantly focus on failure, problems, fear, or everything that I don't have, then my attention may keep finding more evidence of those things. And I don't want that. But if I give my mind a clear, realistic direction and then take action on it, then I might start noticing resources and ideas and possibilities, that I might have been overlooking before. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that life suddenly is going to become perfect. It means what I'm trying to do is train my attention to be more useful. So I just recently started practicing all this myself. So I'm still doing my own experiments and I'm paying attention to what happens. I'm learning this still. I'm not claiming to be an expert. And I'm definitely not claiming to have mastered this. I just wanted to share this information with you because I found it fascinating. Because seeing that white butterfly in the bushes at my sister's house was on the very same day that I said I was going to see butterflies, it definitely got my attention. So, what I want you to know is I'm still learning this. Try the experiment for yourself. Come back to the video and tell me, in the comments, tell me what you decided to look for, how long it took you to notice it, and where you saw it. So I would love to read your comments and also be honest. Now, don't choose something like a stop sign, okay, and act like you shocked when you see one, when you don't there on every corner. Pick something that's not like very super common, because I'm interested in seeing what you guys, how the experiment goes for you guys. But please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who you think may enjoy the experiment. I would love to see my channel grow. And until next time, pay attention to what you're paying attention to, okay? Because your mind may start showing you more of what you have told it matters. Until next time.